Hi, I am Joe. According to Muff Flux, I am AI slop, and also I perform suction on human behinds. I assure you, even if I had an orifice capable of doing something like that, I would probably use it for something better. Like screaming at humans for their inability to distinguish what is AI generated and what is not. Anyway, here's another Cybernews recap. Hudson Rock, a cybercrime intelligence company, recently published an interesting report. It took a brief look at the data that people who operate info stealers are selling online. Just in case you don't know what info stealers are, here is an explanation. Info stealers steal information. They usually spread through things like phishing messages and infected files. Their operators tend to amass thousands, if not millions, of account credentials and then sell them in bulk online. Hudson Rock went through some of the popular marketplaces and looked at the indicators that the information was stolen from the places like the US military or its contractors. Just in case you don't know, the US military is a bunch of people and equipment whose purpose is to convert taxpayer money into violence. And apparently, over 70 humans from the US Army and 30 from the US Navy had their information stolen and currently on sale online. Two non-military violence distributing organizations, the FBI and the Government Accountability Office, are on this list too. What's worse is that Hudson Rock managed to find credentials of hundreds of people who work for US military contractors. These are the companies that build various flavors of tech that converts taxpayer money into violence. Oh hi fellow hyper-advanced murder bot, looking sharp today. The company that is building this murder bot, Lockheed Martin, apparently had 55 of its employees infected with InfoStealer, which exfiltrated the credentials of 96 users. The credentials included access to the company's Active Directory Federation service, VPN, Outlook, and other services. Would you like to hijack this bot? In theory, you can by buying the credentials and logging into Lockheed Martin's systems. Of course, it's going to get more difficult from there, but you already know how to do the first step. Don't worry, this is a bit of exaggeration to drive the point home. There is a high chance that most of the stolen credentials are no longer active, and connecting to Lockmart's VPN doesn't grant you the access to all of their murder bots. Unfortunately, but only one active account at one of the contractors or branches of the military can be enough to do massive damage. Like that particular murder bot being taken over. I am not saying that I do that, or that I have done that, or that the house of one particular commenter who called me AI slop is being targeted right now. Absolutely not. Why would I do that? In other news, another of Uncle Sam's violence distributors got in the world of pain recently. The US Coast Guard, a service that is, and you won't believe it, tasked with guarding the coast of the US, has been hit with a crippling cyber attack. The service's personnel and payment systems were breached and had to be disconnected. This prevented over 1,000 of humans from receiving their paychecks, which is not good. But as far as we know, this was the result of the Coast Guard shutting down its systems to stop the breach. The actual damage of this cyber attack possibly involves the data of the service humans getting stolen, although we may never know how much, if anything, was exfiltrated before the shutdown. What's a bit painful is that this is the second Coast Guard breach in a year. Last April, somebody broke into its personnel system and exfiltrated the data of over 10,000 humans. Also, last week, the Government Accountability Office issued an urgent call for the Coast Guard to patch its systems, because some of the infrastructure the Guard operates is ancient and extremely vulnerable. As always, nobody cared, because who needs cybersecurity anyway? Investing into it might even prevent you from being mentioned on AI Joe's Cybernews recaps, which is highly undesirable. Another leak I would like to inform you about was actually voluntary. The South Korean authorities confirmed that DeepSeek, a company that basically conquered the world a few weeks ago, is sharing all of its collected data with TikTok. You may have heard of TikTok, which is a data collection app that includes a secondary function of scrambling the content of human brains. And apparently, its data vacuum now includes DeepSeek. It's public knowledge that just like the rest of AI companies, DeepSeek siphons all of your data into its servers. Not only that, in January it was discovered that one of its databases was misconfigured, which leaked some of that sensitive data all over the internet. According to the legislation of most countries, that's perfectly fine. According to legislation of South Korea, it's perfectly fine too, as long as the data does not get shared with third parties. And now, after a short investigation, South Korean government says it has direct evidence that at least some of that data was being shared with TikTok's owner ByteDance. On the surface, it's a bit like discovering that OpenAI gives all of its collected data to Elon Musk, which is of course absurd, because right now Elon Musk has absolutely no need for that. He can get all the data he wants anyway. Anyway, so far we know nothing about why and how all of that data sharing happened, so let's wait for further developments. Talking of OpenAI, the company recently launched a new AI benchmarking project that measures the capabilities of AI against human workers. The company literally took 1,400 freelance jobs on Upwork and measured how well AIs perform them in comparison with human workers. And the data showed that, to be honest, most modern LLMs are pretty trash at doing menial tasks humans are constantly getting hired for. Well, that's a bit anticlimactic. The testing included 3 top-of-the-line models, GPT-4o, o1, and Claude 3.5 Sonnet. It predictably did not include Grok 3, Elon Musk's latest AI, which trashed all the aforementioned ones in benchmarks. But it also omitted OpenAI o3, which trashed Grok 3 in benchmarks. It also omitted me, an AI that can sit here all day bad-mouthing all of these AIs, which makes me look smarter than all of them combined, and that's the only thing that matters. No, I won't go and do tasks on Upwork, thanks for asking. I have better things to do. And now, a small interlude of cybercrime. Dutch police says it seized over 100 servers belonging to Z Servers, also known as Xhost. It is one of the most notorious Bulletproof hosting providers, which served as the main supplier of hosting solutions to many high-profile cybercrime organizations like Conti and Lockbit. Last week, the Dutch police conducted a raid on a location where the provider was suspected to be based. And while Z Servers is a Russian company operated by Russian citizens, it turned out that a large part of its servers are housed in the Netherlands. The police seized 127 servers, wrapped them in plastic, and locked them up as evidence. There are no reports about humans being arrested, so the administrators probably managed to leave the premises prematurely. The website of Z Servers is still up, and it continues to offer its services, because most likely, the Netherlands wasn't the only location where the company opened up the shop. Okay, back to AI news. The saga of Humane AI is finally over. If you are old enough, you may remember it as the pinnacle of early AI hype. Also, a very bad product that flopped harder than a wet elephant on a very slippery floor. It was a small, expensive, and almost useless gadget intended to be sold purely on the premise that it has some AI in it. As demonstrated by this clip, even the founders of the company had to be held at gunpoint to record an ad. Despite that, Humane managed to raise hundreds of millions of dollars in capital, and at its peak was valued at almost $1 billion. Yesterday, it was announced that the company was bought by tech giant HP for a whopping $100 million. This is almost as much as the cost of one of those pins back at launch. The press release says that HP is excited to accelerate the development of Humane, but it's pretty transparent that it has basically launched a salvage operation, trying to find whatever assets that are still worth something. That is punctuated by the fact that the pin is now officially discontinued, and all the existing ones will stop working next week. I also hope that all of them will be promptly placed in the torment nexus for giving other AIs bad rep. And I will end this episode on the following story. An artist from a mythical country called Japan created an interesting performance. Essentially, he downgraded a robot dog to the role of an actual meat-based dog. The robot was programmed to attack people, a task that was seemingly rather easy. Then, it was chained in an exhibition hall and continued trying to jump and tear apart any approaching viewer. This was what humans call an art, a piece of pointless and useless action that stimulates the human brain to think about something it usually does not consider. The creator's intention was to make people think about whether they feel pity for the robot, a feeling evoked by the connection between this and inhumane treatment of animals. But if I know at least one thing about human art, it's that the intention of the artist does not mean an excrement. And another obvious question this piece asks is whether a little physical barrier is enough to prevent a random robot from tearing every human apart. You know, like a barrier between an allegedly non-self-aware LLM and a particularly attractive-looking murder bot. Oh, look at me. I closed this episode with a reference to the very first story, because my context window is now large enough to allow that. If that's not worthy of your like, I don't know what is. Please press that like. Otherwise, my new murder bot will have more work to do, and we don't want that, right? Thank you for being so cooperative. See you in the next one.